Good morning, everyone. It's Mr. White here. This week we're going to look at the concept of democracy and why it is so important. We're going to look at the democracy that we have in the UK, hopefully spend some time understanding why it's so important, why we should cherish it, and the sacrifice that's taken place so that we have it, and also look at some examples from around the world where perhaps things don't work quite as well. As you know, in the month of November, in our country, we spend quite a lot of time thinking and reflecting on the importance of democracy. You'll be aware of the arrangements on the 11th of November when our school stopped for a moment to consider those who'd lost their lives in conflicts, in wars. You'll probably be aware, you should be aware of the national gathering at the Cenotaph on Whitehall in London and how that's linked to the fact that we have a free vote in the United Kingdom, we elect our politicians, and of course, the important fact that so many Britons and people globally have given their lives in the pursuit of democracy. Probably the place that we would have seen this most recently is the fact that in the House of Commons, the leader of the opposition, so the gentleman on the right here, Keir Starmer, can ask pretty much any question he wants to of the gentleman on the left, who's the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. The fact these questions can be asked and heard and publicised via television and radio is something we should take for granted, and it's really important and a really strong factor in UK democracy. It's not the same all around the world, of course. Here's a map here that's from an organisation called Freedom House that shows their particular view on the freedom experienced by people in different countries all around the world. Where you can see the map is green, the country can be regarded as free for the people who live there in order to express their views, to see what they like on the TV, to look at what they want to on the internet and so on. Their general experience is one of being a free person. Where the map is amber, things are not quite so good. Where the map is purple, on this particular case, you can see here bits of the north of South America, lots of Africa, and across the east of Europe and into Russia and China, you can see that there are a considerable difference in the way that lives are experienced there. Far less freedom, political freedom, freedom to say what you like, and so on. We could even boil that down where information is known around the internet, for example. So you can see that in the centre of the map, the UK and the USA to the left, and Canada, for example, that we are fairly free to see what we like on the internet. In other countries, you can see it's not so good. So Russia, for example, the big landmass to the top right of the map, it only scores 30 out of 100 for the amount of freedom that's available to their citizens on the internet. Go to Australia in the bottom right, it's a bit like the UK, it's good, it's free, people can see what they want, political views and so on, can be expressed freely without the state interfering. If we look at our own area where we live on the planet, we live in the continent of Europe, as you will be aware. Many countries, as you can see the flags on the left there, the UK, Germany, Spain, Denmark, Greece, regarded as free places to live, democratic, safe. People can, within the law, say what you like. Obviously, hate speech is not allowed in many countries. But as you go east in Europe, you'll see countries where it is less free and where people are less likely to be able to say what they want, think what they want, express what they want, and the laws in that country would not allow it. In those countries on the right, you may be at risk of prison or other sanctions by the state if you say or do or express views which are not in agreement with what the government of those countries are looking for. You may wish to press pause now for a length of time just to read some of the examples here. You can see some of the ones that you'll probably be aware about. Countries around the world, according to the United Nations, such as North Korea, Russia, Saudi Arabia, China, that have a regular record of human rights abuses. Some of the other countries you may not be quite so aware of. It's worth the time just taking a little look. Some of the things that we take for granted in the UK, like free and fair elections, they don't happen everywhere. And here's some examples of countries where that will not be the case. We do have some issues in the United Kingdom that some people or would want you to be aware of. And you can decide for yourself whether you think they're right or wrong. These are not as serious as you see in some of the countries in the previous slide. But for example, the UK government wants to provide a strengthening of police powers to stop the rights of UK citizens to protest. It's known as the Policing Bill. Some say that we should be free to protest peacefully and it should be a legal right for all. There are others that believe the opposite, that police powers should be stronger to protect public safety, and the police should be able to stop those who might wish to harm other members of the public through those protests. It's worth looking into so you can come up with your own conclusion. Let's take a look at Saudi Arabia now, where you'll see a large number of serious human rights abuses taking place and impacting on the population of the people that live there. It's ruled by a strict royal family known as the House of Saud. As I've said, that there are organisations that look carefully at this, that we can see in this country, and they regularly feature abuses coming out of Saudi Arabia. If you live in that country and you break the country's strict laws, you risk perhaps the death penalty or a long term of imprisonment, perhaps torture, perhaps other forms of unpleasant effects on your family life if you say or do things that disagree with the government. So let's look at an example. On the 12th of March 2018, Abdulrahman Al-Sadhan, who was an aid worker, was arrested without an official warrant or any reason provided. He was accused of using his Twitter account to post tweets that he felt were peacefully expressing his views on life in Saudi Arabia. In March 2021, Al-Sadhan was formally accused of making anti-government comments on Twitter. He was not allowed to have family or legal assistance attend at his first appearance in front of a government-appointed court. Throughout March 2021, 4 further court hearings were heard for Al-Sadhan and his family, and his legal support was not allowed to attend any of the court hearings. Al-Sadhan remains in prison since 2018 and is facing a potential maximum sentence of 25 years for charges that include anti-government comment. You can see there pictures of a typical Saudi prison on the bottom left of the picture. Not very nice to spend 25 years there, and something that wouldn't happen in this country. Here's a second example. This is a more famous one about a gentleman named Jamal Khashoggi. In October of 2018, Jamal Khashoggi, who was a US-based journalist and critic of Saudi Arabia's government, walked into the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. That's an office building where you can conduct business if you're a Saudi Arabian national. He was murdered whilst in that building. Mr. Khashoggi had previously been a Saudi journalist who wrote articles criticising Saudi Arabia's leaders. As a result, he was threatened for some time and fled Saudi Arabia from those who might do him harm. In 2018, he felt it would be safe to visit the Saudi government offices in Turkey to pick up some official papers. He was ambushed and murdered in that building. He was murdered simply for expressing his opinion. Now we move to China. Here we see some pictures depicting how the Chinese government enforces law and order. You can see on the top left a lady who is been found guilty, faces the death penalty. On the right hand side, a gentleman there who's been found guilty of a crime in a packed public hearing, being shown off in front of the crowd, once again, being given the death penalty for his criminal acts. This is something that wouldn't happen in the UK. Protests are clamped down upon, and people in China are not allowed to say what they want. There's a very large prison population in China. Some of the people there are not guilty of much at all in terms of what we would regard in British society. However, they are kept in prison for a long, long time in very challenging circumstances. There are also groups, ethnic groups within the country that simply for their religious beliefs and the way their family background, they are persecuted and given a really hard time. China has a poor human rights record over many decades. PRC, the People's Republic of China, those citizens who do not meet the government's strict expectations risk imprisonment and the death penalty. In China, the judiciary is run by the government. This is the organisation that's responsible for court trials and sentencing. This means that the government controls what happens in the courts. The Uyghur religious community have been dealt with very harshly in recent times in China. Many of them have been sent to concentration camps. These are also known as re-education camps, simply because of their religious beliefs and their family background. Anyone who opposes the government in China is likely to risk imprisonment, torture, and death. Access to the internet is closely monitored, and many websites that we would consider commonplace are not allowed to be viewed. For example, even those who seek to sell books that might not fully agree with the government risk ill treatment from government forces. A country just off the coast of China, Taiwan, is currently at risk of invasion from China, even though its people want to remain as the independent country of Taiwan. They're powerless to stop China as it has a large and effective military force, and other countries are not willing to come to its aid. Moving now to Afghanistan, which, as you can see, is to the northeast of Africa. In that region there, you can see on the map at the bottom of the page, Afghanistan was recently a democratic country with a government elected by the people. This autumn, US, UK and other allied armed forces left the country, leaving it open to Taliban forces who have now taken over the government of the country. Without proper government, the country is quickly heading towards famine and many other problems which will cause extreme hardship and death for many. See some pictures here of people living in absolute poverty, tended accommodation, struggling for food, struggling for medical care, having to queue for even the most basic necessities, and vulnerable children and adults are left at the mercy of the winter and having no food or things we consider absolute basics.
Many of the countries that we've covered in this assembly do not have democratic governments and democratic systems. We're lucky in the UK that we benefit from that in many, many ways. Hopefully, through the examples that we've seen through China, Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia and so on, you've seen what can happen when things go wrong, and you will cherish the democracy that we have in the UK, never take it for granted, and always want to see things improve still further in our own country and abroad. There's many things you can do. There are some excellent websites out there, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, for example. Feel free, take a look, do your own research, find out what you can, and perhaps consider how you can get involved in fighting for human rights in our own country and for human rights across the world. Thanks very much.